Ladies and gentlemen, life has a way of surprising us, often in the most unsettling ways. When a person doesn't show up for you, when they stop being there, it can feel like the ground beneath your feet is cracking. We often invest so much in our relationships, whether they're with family, friends, or partners, that when that bond begins to fray or break, it strikes at the very core of our identity. You may feel abandoned, left behind, and overwhelmed by a sense of loneliness. It's in these moments that you must remember something crucial. Your worth is not determined by the presence or absence of others in your life. First, understand that people are not static. Relationships change, people grow, and sometimes they drift apart. This doesn't necessarily reflect something about your value. It's simply a part of the ebb and flow of human existence. What you need to do when faced with this challenge is to refuse to let it define you. Your life cannot be built on a foundation of someone else's involvement or approval. If you let your world be shaped solely by the actions of others, you risk losing control over your own narrative. The temptation, of course, is to dwell in self-pity or to let your mind spiral into resentment. It's easy to become bitter and consumed by anger, but that won't lead you to growth. Instead, stand tall in the face of that disappointment. Accept the reality that this person may no longer be part of your life for a reason, and while that reason might remain unclear, your path forward doesn't need their approval or acknowledgement. The most empowering thing you can do is focus on yourself. Cultivate your own strength, your own resilience. Push yourself to become the person you needed when you were struggling. Invest in your own growth, your own journey. Find meaning in your own existence. You are capable of so much more than you realize, and often it's only when we face these difficult moments that we uncover our true potential. Take this as an opportunity to reflect on who you are, what you truly want, and how you can move forward with integrity without relying on anyone else to define your path. Keep moving, keep growing, and eventually you'll look back and realize that your strength came from within, not from anyone else's presence or validation. Your value is not determined by the presence or actions of others. It's essential to recognize your intrinsic worth and not base it on external approval. People grow, evolve, and sometimes drift apart. This natural shift doesn't reflect negatively on you, but is simply part of life's flow. While it's easy to feel hurt or angry, dwelling on these feelings will not lead to personal growth. Instead, channel your energy into resilience. Use the experience as an opportunity to focus on yourself, developing your own strength, resilience, and purpose in life. True empowerment comes from relying on yourself, finding meaning in your journey, and pushing forward regardless of others' involvement. Your self-worth is not determined by the presence or absence of others in your life. This concept might sound simple, but it is incredibly profound when we begin to truly internalize it. Too often, people allow their sense of value to be shaped by how others see them or how they think they are perceived. This is especially true in relationships, whether they're friendships, family bonds, or romantic involvements. When someone we care about distances themselves or isn't there for us in the way we need, it can feel like our worth diminishes. But this belief is rooted in a misunderstanding of who we are and what defines our value. When you base your sense of self-worth on others, you become a passive participant in your own life. You are giving someone else the power to define you. This is a dangerous path because it places your emotional well-being in the hands of someone else's actions, and people are unpredictable. Their behavior is often influenced by factors that have little to do with you personally, and if you're not careful, you might spend your life trying to please others, to fit into molds, or to meet expectations that are not even your own. If someone pulls away or doesn't respond in the way you hope, it can feel as if your existence itself is less significant, but this couldn't be further from the truth. The reality is that no one else can determine your worth. Your value is intrinsic. It's not something that can be lost because of someone else's behavior. nor is it something that can be earned or validated by the actions of others. You are valuable simply because you exist. There is no external factor that can truly take that away from you. But to truly embrace this, you need to detach your sense of self from the validation of others. This is not to say that relationships are unimportant or that we should be indifferent to the people in our lives. On the contrary, meaningful connections enrich our lives in profound ways. However, your worth should never be contingent on another person's recognition or affirmation of you. Consider how easy it is to fall into the trap of defining your worth through social media or public approval. In today's world, many people live for likes, comments, and followers. Their sense of being valued becomes tied to external validation. If their posts don't get the attention they expect, they might feel invisible or unimportant. This kind of external dependence is unsustainable, and ultimately it leaves people empty and unfulfilled because they are measuring their worth against something that is not rooted in truth. The people around you, no matter how much you care for them, are not in control of your value. They may disappoint you, leave you, or fail to meet your expectations, but their actions don't change the fact that you have unique strengths, talents, and qualities that make you who you are. People may not always recognize your worth, but that doesn't diminish it. They may fail to see the potential in you, but that doesn't mean it's not there. And the worst thing you can do is let someone else's failure to appreciate you become the measure of your own value. Self-worth isn't about achieving perfection, pleasing others, or being constantly validated. It's about acknowledging that you are enough, just as you are. It's about recognizing your inherent dignity and treating yourself with the same respect and care that you would offer to others. When you can understand this, you will begin to build a foundation that is firm and unshakable, regardless of the circumstances around you. The journey to recognizing your worth starts with self-acceptance. You must learn to embrace who you are, flaws and all. When you do this, you stop seeking external sources of validation because you no longer need them to feel whole. You understand that you are worthy of love, respect, and happiness regardless of what anyone else might say or do. This is not an easy process, and it often requires deep reflection and a willingness to let go of old beliefs or patterns of thinking that have been ingrained over the years. But it is a necessary one if you want to lead a life that is rich in fulfillment, free from the shackles of external judgment. The truth is that when you start to realize your own worth, something powerful happens. You begin to attract the right people into your life, those who see you for who you truly are and who appreciate your value. And more importantly, you stop giving your energy to those who don't recognize it. You no longer allow people's indifference or rejection to define you. Instead, you stand firm in the knowledge that your value is constant, regardless of anyone else's actions. Your worth is a steady, unwavering presence like the core of who you are, and it cannot be diminished or increased by the actions of others. This is the essence of personal empowerment. When you are in control of your own value, you can move through life with confidence and resilience, no longer waiting for external validation to tell you who you are or how you should feel. The only voice that truly matters is your own, and when you begin to listen to it, you will discover just how much strength and power you possess within yourself. Life is constantly shifting, evolving, and changing, and one of the most significant aspects of this is the way relationships evolve over time. People grow, they mature, they change, and their paths may diverge. This is a natural part of human existence, and it's important to understand that the dynamics of relationships are fluid. They are not static. Sometimes, the people who were once an integral part of your life may no longer fit into the picture in the same way they once did, and this can create confusion, sadness, and even a sense of loss. Yet, It's essential to recognize that these changes are not inherently negative. In fact, they are part of a much broader process of growth, both for the individuals involved and for the relationships themselves. When we form relationships, we are often looking for connection and understanding. We want someone who shares our values, interests, and goals. However, as time progresses, people change. Their beliefs may shift, their priorities may evolve, or their personal goals may take them in a different direction. These changes can make it difficult to maintain the same connection that existed in the past. One person may find themselves moving forward in ways that the other person cannot, or perhaps the interests that once brought them together begin to fade. The relationship, once dynamic, starts to feel strained, and people can find themselves growing apart without even realizing it. This is particularly hard when you have invested significant time and energy into a relationship. You may have placed a great deal of emotional value on that connection, and when it starts to unravel or fade, it can feel like a personal failure. You may begin to question whether you did something wrong or whether you could have done more to keep the relationship intact. However, it's important to remember that the fact that a relationship changes or ends doesn't necessarily mean anything was wrong with either person. People are complex, and their needs and desires can evolve in ways that are difficult to predict or understand. Sometimes, a relationship simply reaches its natural conclusion because both individuals have outgrown the connection or have developed in different directions. One of the most significant challenges that people face when relationships change is the tendency to cling to the past. The good memories, the shared experiences, the bonds that were once so strong, these things can create a sense of attachment that makes it hard to let go, but holding on to something that is no longer sustainable can cause more harm than good. It can lead to resentment, bitterness, and frustration as you constantly try to rekindle something that has already changed. It's crucial to understand that letting go is not a sign of weakness or failure. Rather, it's a recognition that the relationship has run its course and that it's time to move forward. In many cases, when a relationship shifts or ends, it opens the door for new opportunities. This can be difficult to see in the moment, especially if the relationship was a source of comfort or security. However, new relationships, whether they are friendships, romantic partnerships, or professional connections, often come with new perspectives, experiences, and growth. These opportunities allow you to evolve in ways you might not have expected, and they can help you discover parts of yourself that were previously hidden. Change is often a catalyst for personal development, and when we resist it, we limit our ability to grow. People who have been important to us may not always remain in our lives, and while this can be painful, it's also an important reminder that our identity should not be defined by any one person or relationship. We are multifaceted, and our worth is not dependent on others' presence in our lives. Each relationship, whether it lasts a lifetime or fades away, is an opportunity to learn more about ourselves and the world around us. The key to navigating these changes is not to fight against them, but to embrace the idea that life is about constant transformation. It's also vital to recognize that not all relationships are meant to last forever. This can be a difficult truth to accept, especially if you have a deep emotional attachment to someone. However, holding on to relationships that no longer serve you or that have grown stagnant can prevent you from experiencing the fullness of life. Every person who enters your life leaves an imprint on you, and even when they leave, their impact can remain. But that doesn't mean you have to keep them in your life if they no longer align with your values or if they no longer bring positive energy. Letting go doesn't erase the past. It simply allows you to create space for the future. The process of accepting change in relationships is not an overnight one. It can be difficult, and it may require a great deal of self-reflection and emotional resilience. However, with time, you will begin to realize that life's changes aren't personal attacks. They are simply part of the natural flow of existence. Relationships that once seemed irreplaceable may fade, but new ones, even more meaningful ones, will take their place. Growth, in all its forms, is often uncomfortable, but it is necessary for evolution. By accepting the impermanence of relationships, we are better equipped to move forward. We can look back on the good times without clinging to them, appreciate the lessons learned, and then turn our attention to the future with openness and curiosity. Change, though sometimes painful, can be the beginning of something new and better. When faced with disappointment, especially in relationships, the natural response is often one of frustration and resentment. It's easy to allow these emotions to consume us, to focus on the ways in which we feel wronged or hurt. However, dwelling in self-pity or allowing anger to dictate our actions only prolongs our suffering and prevents us from moving forward. Resentment, particularly when it is not addressed, can become a heavy burden that colors our perspective on life and keeps us anchored in the past. The truth is, when someone disappoints you, the best thing you can do is resist the temptation to wallow in negativity or bitterness. It's in these very moments of frustration that you have the opportunity to regain control and redirect your energy towards something far more powerful: personal growth. It's completely natural to feel hurt when someone lets you down. We invest emotionally in relationships because we believe in the connection, the trust, and the shared understanding between two people. When that bond is broken or betrayed, the sense of loss can feel overwhelming. Yet, the longer we allow ourselves to linger in anger or self-pity, the more we allow the person who has wronged us to hold power over our emotional well-being. This, in itself, is a form of self-imprisonment. The longer we hold onto these negative emotions, the more we are defined by the actions of others, rather than taking control of our own story. Instead of allowing resentment to fester, it is far more empowering to face the situation directly and let go of the emotions that no longer serve us. Letting go doesn't mean condoning the behavior or forgetting the hurt caused. It simply means choosing not to allow it to dictate the course of our lives. By releasing resentment, we are reclaiming our own peace and emotional freedom. This act of releasing is not just an emotional practice. It is a deeply transformative process that allows you to take responsibility for your own happiness. You cannot control the actions of others, but you can control your response to them. Anger and resentment can often feel like a shield, a way to protect ourselves from further hurt. We think that by holding on to these feelings, we are somehow defending ourselves or ensuring that we don't get hurt again. But in reality, these emotions only serve to keep us trapped in the past. They prevent us from seeing the potential for growth and change in the present moment. Resentment makes us live in a state of perpetual disappointment, constantly reliving the event or interaction that caused us pain. By doing this, we deny ourselves the opportunity to move beyond the hurt, to learn from it, and to grow stronger. Instead of staying stuck in this cycle, consider the alternative: embrace the opportunity to learn. Every difficult experience holds a lesson, and those lessons can only be learned when we are willing to step back, take a deep breath, and look at the situation from a place of emotional neutrality. This doesn't mean that the hurt doesn't matter. It absolutely does. But by stepping away from the immediate emotional response and examining the situation objectively, we open ourselves up to understanding why it happened and what we can learn from it. Maybe the person who disappointed you was acting out of their own pain or insecurity. Perhaps their actions were a reflection of something they were struggling with internally, and they never intended to hurt you. Recognizing this doesn't excuse their behavior, but it does allow you to release the anger and instead focus on how to move forward. When you shift your focus from resentment to self-growth, you begin to see challenges as opportunities. Each time you are hurt, each time you are disappointed, you have the choice to either remain stuck in bitterness or to use that pain as fuel for personal development. By choosing growth over resentment, you are making a conscious decision to become better, stronger, and more resilient with each experience. Instead of letting someone else's actions dictate your emotional state, you take the reins and shape your own emotional landscape. Letting go of resentment also opens the door for healthier, more fulfilling relationships in the future. When we hold on to anger or bitterness, it can cloud our judgment and prevent us from connecting with others in a genuine, open way. We may project our past hurts onto new relationships, unconsciously placing walls around ourselves in an effort to protect against further disappointment. However, when we release resentment, we free ourselves to engage with others authentically, without the fear of being hurt again. This doesn't mean we should let our guard down completely, but rather that we are no longer bound by the emotional baggage of past experiences. Furthermore, by releasing resentment, we regain the power to create our own peace. We no longer wait for others to apologize, to make amends, or to validate our feelings. We take responsibility for our own emotional well-being and choose not to give anyone the power to dictate our happiness. This is a form of emotional sovereignty, understanding that, while we cannot control the actions of others, we can control how we choose to respond, and in that response, we find our freedom. Resisting the temptation to remain bitter or angry is not easy. It requires conscious effort and a willingness to face your emotions head on rather than suppressing them or letting them dictate your behavior. But once you begin to practice this, you will find that the weight of resentment becomes easier to bear. Over time, you will develop a sense of emotional resilience that allows you to handle life's challenges with a greater sense of grace and composure. When you stop living in resentment, you open up space in your heart and mind for new possibilities, new relationships, and new experiences. Instead of being weighed down by the past, you can look to the future with hope and a renewed sense of purpose. When we encounter moments of personal disappointment or hardship, it's often tempting to give in to the hurt, retreat inward, and wait for things to improve on their own. However, this passive approach only prolongs the discomfort and hinders our potential for growth. The true opportunity for transformation arises when we decide to focus on ourselves and our personal development. Instead of looking outward, waiting for circumstances or other people to change, we must recognize the immense power we have to shape our own lives. The decision to focus on personal growth, to actively invest in improving ourselves, is one of the most empowering actions we can take in the face of adversity. Personal growth is not a linear process. It's not always smooth or easy. It can be uncomfortable, challenging, and at times frustrating, but it is through this discomfort that we build strength and resilience. The first step toward personal growth is often self-awareness. It requires an honest assessment of where you are in your life, what you want to achieve, and what obstacles might be holding you back. This self-reflection is not about judging yourself or beating yourself up over past mistakes, but rather about gaining a clearer understanding of your strengths, weaknesses, and desires. When you are clear about who you are and where you want to go, you can begin to make conscious choices that align with your goals. A critical aspect of focusing on personal growth is the willingness to learn. This might mean reading books, taking courses, attending workshops, or simply being open to new ideas and experiences. Growth doesn't happen in a vacuum. It comes from a constant process of learning, whether that's through formal education or the lessons we encounter in everyday life. When we commit to learning, we expand our horizons, challenge our assumptions, and become more adaptable in the face of life's challenges. This mindset of continuous learning fosters a sense of curiosity that propels us forward, even when the path is unclear or the road ahead feels uncertain. Along with learning, growth requires action. It's not enough to simply understand what needs to change or what areas of our lives need improvement. We must take deliberate steps to make those changes. Action is the bridge between knowledge and transformation. If we want to become healthier, we have to move our bodies, make better dietary choices, and prioritize self-care. If we want to be more confident, we have to practice stepping outside our comfort zones and confronting our fears. Growth only happens when we make the effort to put our intentions into practice, even when it feels difficult or uncomfortable. One of the most important aspects of focusing on personal growth is the ability to embrace failure. Failure is often seen as a setback, something to be avoided at all costs. However, in reality, failure is an essential part of the growth process. Each time we fail, we learn something valuable about ourselves. We learn what doesn't work, what we can improve, and what we are truly capable of. Failure provides insight and teaches resilience. The key is to reframe failure not as a permanent state, but as a stepping stone on the path to success. It's important to view setbacks not as reasons to give up, but as opportunities to refine your approach, to dig deeper, and to grow stronger. In the pursuit of personal growth, it's also crucial to cultivate patience. Change doesn't happen overnight, and often the progress we make is slow and incremental. This can be frustrating, especially when we expect quick results or immediate gratification, but true growth is often subtle. It's the small, consistent improvements that build up over time and lead to significant transformation. Patience is the foundation that allows us to stay committed to our goals, even when the results are not immediately visible. By cultivating patience, we learn to trust the process, to accept that growth takes time, and to stay focused on the long-term vision. A key part of focusing on personal growth is surrounding ourselves with the right influences. The people we spend time with, the media we consume, and the environments we inhabit all play a significant role in shaping our mindset and our development. If we want to grow, we must choose to be around people who inspire us, challenge us, and support our goals. We should seek out relationships that encourage us to become better versions of ourselves, rather than those that drag us down or keep us stuck. Similarly, the content we consume, whether it's books, podcasts, or social media, should align with our desire to improve and expand our minds. The environments we choose to work and live in should foster creativity, productivity, and well-being. By consciously surrounding ourselves with positive influences, we create a foundation that nurtures growth and development. In addition to these external influences, personal growth requires a commitment to self-compassion. As we strive for improvement, it's easy to become overly critical of ourselves, especially when things don't go as planned. However, self-compassion allows us to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding when we fall short. It's the recognition that we are all human and growth is a messy, imperfect process. Self-compassion means accepting our flaws and shortcomings without judgment and giving ourselves the grace to try again. This attitude of kindness toward ourselves is essential for long-term growth because it prevents us from giving up when the going gets tough. Ultimately, focusing on personal growth is about taking control of your own life and making conscious decisions to become the person you want to be. It's about recognizing that your potential is not determined by the circumstances around you, but by your own choices and actions. When you focus on growth, you empower yourself to create the life you desire, no matter the challenges or setbacks you may face along the way. By committing to personal development, you are investing in yourself and in your future, and this investment will pay dividends in ways that are often unexpected, but always rewarding. True empowerment arises when we learn to rely on ourselves. when we accept that our strength and resilience come from within. There's a unique kind of freedom that comes from understanding that, no matter what happens in the external world, we are fully capable of navigating through life on our own terms. This sense of self-reliance doesn't mean rejecting help or dismissing the value of relationships. It simply means recognizing that we have the ability to handle whatever life throws at us, and that we are not dependent on others to validate our worth or give us direction. Self-reliance is the foundation upon which we build the life we want, one that is shaped by our own choices, our own actions, and our own values. The first step towards self-reliance is building a sense of internal confidence. When we rely on ourselves, we trust our own judgment and believe that we have the capacity to make decisions that serve our best interests. This confidence doesn't mean that we are immune to mistakes or failure, but it means that we believe in our ability to learn from those experiences and move forward. It is this trust in ourselves that allows us to take risks, step into the unknown, and pursue our dreams without constantly seeking reassurance or validation from others. True confidence is born from within, and it grows stronger the more we challenge ourselves and take responsibility for our lives. However, self-reliance is not about isolating ourselves or turning away from the support of others. It's about understanding that the most powerful resource we have is our own inner strength. While the support and encouragement of others are valuable, they should never be the cornerstone of our identity or the primary source of our motivation. When we rely on external sources for validation or direction, we risk becoming dependent on them, and if those sources change or disappear, we can find ourselves lost or adrift. Self-reliance, on the other hand, ensures that we always have a solid foundation to return to. We know that, regardless of the external circumstances, we are capable of moving forward on our own. Another key aspect of self-reliance is taking responsibility for our actions and our choices. When we accept full responsibility for our lives, we stop blaming others or external factors for our circumstances. Instead of looking for someone to blame when things go wrong, we look inward and ask ourselves how we can improve or what we can learn from the experience. This shift in mindset is incredibly empowering. It means we take control of our destiny and stop allowing life's challenges to define us. It's easy to point fingers, to blame others, or to make excuses when things don't go as planned. But it's in owning our decisions, both good and bad, that we discover our true power. Taking responsibility also means being honest with ourselves about our strengths and weaknesses. Self-reliance isn't about pretending to have it all together or projecting an image of perfection. It's about acknowledging where we can improve and taking the necessary steps to do so. It's about understanding that growth is a continuous process, and that no matter how much we've achieved, there's always room for development. Self-reliance requires the humility to recognize that we are constantly evolving, and that we have the power to shape our own development. It is the willingness to work on ourselves, to learn new skills, to push past our limitations, and to become better versions of who we are. Part of being self-reliant is also learning to manage our own emotions. External events and other people's behavior can trigger strong emotional responses in us, but self-reliance means that we learn to regulate those emotions and not let them control us. It's about taking ownership of our feelings and recognizing that we have the power to change how we respond to situations. Emotions are not something that happen to us. They are a natural part of being human, but how we choose to react to them is entirely within our control. When we take responsibility for our emotional responses, we empower ourselves to approach challenges with a clear mind and a steady heart, rather than being at the mercy of our feelings. Moreover, self-reliance allows us to set clear boundaries and protect our own energy. When we are dependent on others for validation or approval, we may find ourselves overextending ourselves or compromising our own values to meet others' expectations. But when we are self-reliant, we understand the importance of boundaries. We learn to say no when necessary, to prioritize our own well-being, and to protect our time and energy. Boundaries are not about shutting others out. They are about respecting ourselves and creating the space needed for growth. By setting boundaries, we create an environment where we can thrive independently, without sacrificing our own needs for the sake of others. One of the most powerful aspects of self-reliance is that it enables us to navigate life with a sense of purpose. When we are reliant on others or constantly seeking external validation, it's easy to become lost or confused about what we truly want. But when we trust ourselves, when we rely on our own inner compass, we can make decisions that are aligned with our values and aspirations. We no longer look to others for direction or approval. Instead, we look inward and ask ourselves what feels right. This sense of clarity and purpose empowers us to pursue our goals with conviction, to stay focused on our own path, and to create the life we desire, regardless of external distractions or challenges. Self-reliance also fosters a sense of independence. We become less dependent on others for emotional support, financial stability, or validation. Instead, we develop the confidence and skills to take care of ourselves, to make our own decisions, and to create the circumstances that will lead to our success. This independence doesn't mean that we never ask for help, or that we don't value the relationships in our lives. It simply means that we are no longer reliant on anyone else to define our worth, or to determine our happiness. We recognize that we are capable of standing on our own 2 feet and that our future is ultimately in our hands. By cultivating self-reliance, we create a foundation for a life that is grounded in personal strength, responsibility, and clarity. We learn to trust ourselves, to take ownership of our choices, and to develop the resilience needed to handle whatever challenges come our way. When we are self-reliant, we are not only empowered to shape our own destiny, but we also become a source of inspiration and strength for those around us, showing others the power of independence, self-confidence, and personal growth. In the end, the most profound truth we can hold onto is this: the power to shape our lives, to navigate challenges, and to grow from every experience lies within us. It is easy to be swept away by the forces of external circumstances or the actions of others, but real strength comes from within, through self-reliance, self-awareness, and the willingness to evolve. Life will inevitably throw obstacles in our path. Relationships will change and disappointments will come. But when we focus on our own growth, release the weight of resentment, and take responsibility for our journey, we unlock our true potential. Every challenge, every disappointment, and every change is an opportunity in disguise, a chance to learn, adapt, and ultimately become stronger. The power to move forward, to build resilience, and to craft a life of meaning lies in how we choose to respond to life's difficulties. By embracing the idea that our strength comes from within, by choosing personal growth over stagnation, and by letting go of the need for external validation, we give ourselves the freedom to create a life that is authentically ours. The path to greatness is not always clear, nor is it easy, but it is ours to walk. And as we continue this journey, we will discover that the most powerful and lasting transformations happen when we look inward, trust in ourselves, and rise to meet the challenges ahead with courage, resilience, and the knowledge that we are capable of far more than we often give ourselves credit. For life is not something that happens to us, it is something we create. So, take the reins, embrace the challenges, and move forward with confidence, knowing that your growth, your strength, and your future are yours to shape.